Dumelang, Absheni, Ralocha, Sanwanani, Mulweni. My name is Naledi Mfoloe, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the latest edition of the African Diaspora News channel, where we unravel the stories that shape our world and our community. Now, President Ibrahim Traore's leadership in Burkina Faso is definitely one to watch. Now, his approach to governance is quite refreshing and bold, and most importantly, centered around the notion of self sufficiency. Now, as an African, I can't help but feel a mix of admiration and curiosity about the path he's actually carving for his country and his people. But first, right, let's talk about one of the most striking moves he made, which is rejecting financial aid from the International Monetary Fund. Now, this, my friends, is a bold statement because when you consider how deeply embedded African nations are in the global financial system, often at the mercy of external institutions like IMF or the World Bank, because for years we've been conditioned to think that we need these external lifelines to survive economically. And yet, right, Traore is rejecting that notion and pushing for self sufficiency and advocating for the mobilization of domestic resources. And this resonates with me on so many levels because the narrative that African nations are perpetually dependent on the West is not only harmful but also limiting because we've seen countries with abundant resources, right, continually struggling under the weight of foreign debt, inflation, and external economic pressures. But Traore's decision is not just a political one. I believe it's a reclaiming of Africans' agency. The vision is clear. Africa can determine its own economy destiny, and Burkina Faso is going to start with that blueprint. Now, we all can agree, right, that the challenge of building a self sustaining economy in the face of structural challenges and security concerns is no small feat, right? But just because something is difficult doesn't mean it isn't worth striving for. In fact, I believe it's time for African countries to stop seeing aid as the only path forward. And because if this rejection of the IMF's aid leads to a deeper commitment to local industries and agriculture, I do believe it could provide a real model for other African nations. But that's not the only aspect of Traore's leadership that's gotten my attention. His decision to turn down Saudi Arabia's offer to build 200 mosques speaks volumes about his approach to governance. Instead of pursuing symbolic gestures, Traore focused on what truly matters for his people, which is critical infrastructures like schools, like hospitals, like businesses, because this is the kind of leadership we need. Because too often, African countries are offered aid in the form of religious structures or monuments. But what's really needed are investments that uplift the lives of people, which is education, healthcare, and job opportunities. And I believe his refusal of this offer is a step towards prioritizing people centered development. And it's easy to get caught up in external recognition or appeasing foreign governments. But Traore's decision shows he has his priorities straight. His vision of Burkina Faso is one of self reliance and not one of dependence on foreign entities. And his leadership is grounded in practical and tangible changes that address immediate needs. And this resonates deeply with many of us on the continent who have grown tired of seeing leaders more focused on prestige than actual development. But of all the initiatives Traore has proposed, the plan to build 1,000 social housing units stands out for me because housing insecurity is a huge issue across Africa, and Burkina Faso is no different. Thousands of people have been displaced by internal conflict, and many others struggle to find decent, affordable housing. So, Traore's focus on providing housing for those in need by 2030 reflects a long term vision that goes beyond short term fixes. Because housing is not just about shelter, but it's about stability, it's about dignity, and creating an environment where people can thrive. Now, if Burkina Faso is to achieve these ambitious goals, especially in terms of housing and infrastructure, there will be a need for strategic collaboration, whether that's with regional bodies or other African nations or even external partners who genuinely want to see the continent succeed. And as an African, man, it's so refreshing to see a leader like Ibrahim Traore because his approach isn't just about rejecting the status quo, but it's always about offering a new model of leadership that prioritizes the needs of the people and demands dignity and seeks sustainable progress. His vision for Africa is one where we control our own economic futures, where we decide how to use our resources, and where development isn't just a buzzword, but a reality for its communities. So for me, Traore represents a shift in leadership, which is one that challenges the old narrative of dependency and external control. If his policies succeed, they could be a catalyst for a broader movement across the continent, one that demands an Africa where the priorities are shaped by the people for the people. It's time for African leaders to stand up, to take charge, and to reshape our own futures. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Ibrahim Traore's leadership and the direction he's actually taking for Burkina Faso. Do you believe it's time for Africa to move away from external dependencies and embrace self sufficiency? And can these bold moves actually deliver the progress we actually need? Let's continue the conversation in the comments. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. And while you're at it, don't forget to give this video a